Welcome to Mobility Outlook conversation. We're very pleased to have Karthikeyan and Natarajan join us this evening. Karthik joined Cyient in March 2020 as the President and Chief Operating Officer. He manages global operations and leads the go-to-market, including sales and marketing and delivery transformation efforts across major industries, along with digital solutions and design-led manufacturing. Karthik's young looks belie his over 28 years of experience in the engineering and technology domain, and he also serves as the chair of the Engineering R&D Council and is part of the Executive Council at NASSCOM. Welcome, Karthik, and thank you for joining us for Mobility Conversations.
Thank you so much, Atul, and pleasure to be part of this discussions, and wish you good luck with your success at Mobility Outlook, and would be happy to answer any question that you may have today.
Would you say that both segments are now poised for a boom cycle? In aerospace, we see large orders from India. The automotive segment seems to be overcoming pandemic-related disruptions. So would you say, you're looking at a boom cycle coming up?
I would break them into two individual parts, Atul. I'll start with automotive, and maybe I'll step back before coming to specific to automotive. So what are the drivers for the next 5 to 10 years or in this decade, if you really take a view of the R&D segment in terms of most of the product companies, which includes aerospace and automotive? And what I would really say that is the biggest change that has happened post-pandemic is led by digitalization and followed by sustainability and time to market. How do you think you can probably innovate faster? Because the innovation cycles are shrinking. And for example, if you take a view of just take electric vehicles, after 125, 130 years, the cycle has come back where 2/3 of the new vehicles sold would be electric. And this is going to be the biggest change that we have not seen over the last 125 years. So from that onwards, that you really start looking at some of the additional challenges that are faced during the last 2 years is about the supply chain disruptions. It's about semiconductor shortage, it's about logistics, and ports are running dry. There are truck drivers who are missing, and there's so many challenges the customer face, and that is really creating a lot of disruptions to the production. And we have heard customers talking about stopping the production for a few days or few weeks, and this has not been heard before in the last 20, 30 years. And plus led by connectivity boost, and the pandemic has taught all of us, how do you think we can really get a lot of things done remotely, and how the backbone is going to be enabled through a strong, highly secured and large bandwidth with low latency can really do wonders in the form of how it can really change the way industries are run. I think these are the primary drivers. And if you really start bringing this into mobility segments like automotive and aerospace, I think they are essentially driven by hybrid electric. I think this is definitely one of the key challenges. The second is about autonomy. And how do you think you can really bring more autonomous way of decision making? You can also equate autonomy to safety, because whenever I hear fully autonomous vehicles, I don't think it is about L5. It is about improving level of safety from L2, L3, L4, L5. So you really want to see how do you think you can reduce the number of fatalities? How do you think you can reduce the number of injuries that is happening? And how do you think you can probably improve the economic value of people who are not being active post trauma or post accidents that is going to happen? So it is all about improving the safety, and followed with significant change that is going to happen on technology acceleration or adoption in the form of digital connectivity. And how do you think you are really going to make a significant improvement based on the data that is going to be collected, and what can be done in the form of data insights driving the new segments of growth, and which can include creating new services, creating new customer experiences, and creating new set of products and solutions that can be offered to the end segments. So these are going to be the ones that is going to drive significant change. But if you really come down to aerospace, I think it is still on the recovery path. I don't say that they're fully recovered. And if you split it into three parts, if you take the commercial short-haul flights, I think this about 75 to 80% of the business of 2019 is already back as we speak in November 2021. But if you really look at on the long haul flights, I think this is still going to take at least another 6 to 9 months before it can really recover to the same levels of 80-85% of 2019, which is likely to happen by same time next year, by 2022. And we expect by 2023 that this would probably be back to 2019 levels. And the third one, which is about the defense and general aviation, helicopters, and business aircrafts, I think that business is intact. So if you really think about it, probably the one on the last one I talked about is fully intact, and probably it's likely to see a growth. And if we talk about the second one, the middle one, which is about the long haul flights, it is still in the recovery path. It may take at least about 12 to 18 months for it to come back to 2019 levels. But if you look at on the short haul flights, I think I would say it is likely to get fully recovered by March 2022, and probably would start seeing the growth coming back. So there are different drivers for both automotive as well as on aerospace. And we are really excited about both, because the way we really started looking at aerospace business, we said it can't get worse than what we have seen in December 2020. So we are really trying to see how do we really build this back up, and probably start taking some market share from competition, and also trying to really drive growth through digitalization and design-led manufacturing. And how do you think we can really drive some more growth around the defense areas? So we are really using the 3D growth strategy for aerospace, led by defense, DLM, and digital. And as far as automotive is concerned, which is primarily led by software and digital, and covering the electrification, autonomous, and the connectivity part of the story in automotive.
Okay. Karthik, I'm just going to slip another question in. You've got almost 3 decades of experience in the industry. Would you say that when you look over the last 100 years, this is the greatest opportunity for Indian industry? There is no license Raj. Indian industry is now globally competitive. Would you say the next decade or decades will present massive opportunity for Indian industry, Indian firms, like never been seen before?
So when you talk about Indian industries, are you talking about automotive and aerospace, or are you talking in general?
In general, in general.
Yeah, so I would say, I think if you look at from services side, the technology services business would probably see a growth post Y2K, right? I think many of them are already seeing that we have not seen this kind of significant demand side so robust that we have seen pre Y2K. So that is definitely here and now, which is likely to stay, which is likely to create a secular growth for the next 5 to 10 years for sure. And if you really start looking at from the larger manufacturing standpoint, with Atmanirbhar initiatives from the government of India, with PLI schemes, and they're really trying to bring in more special incentives and whatever has been talked about, I think it definitely provides the opportunity for manufacturing as well, and especially on the electronic side, with our import bill shooting more than $400-500 billion in the next 3-4 years. I think it makes all the sense to really start producing it here. And also, if you start looking at some of the critical segments like medical devices, healthcare, and security, telecom, I think you'll find that you are better off in having some of these products being produced locally in India, because it is also concerned with population health in general, as well as the national security. I think it definitely has great opportunity out there. But at the same time, I also want to look at how do we really make this manufacturing growth to happen in a more different way than what we have envisaged in the last 2 or 3 decades, which is going to be led by automation, because many times people tend to get confused when you talk about automation, or it is about you're removing the labor. I think it is about getting the quality right the first time, because we cannot afford to have quality standards any different than what is being done out of the Western Hemisphere or in China. So that's going to be very important. So it is going to be led by significant amount of automation of our factories and significant amount of technology interventions. And we have an opportunity to leapfrog in terms of our manufacturing contribution to GDP, which has been pegging around 14 to 15 or 16% over the last 2 decades. I think it definitely has an opportunity to get to about 22 to 25% in the next 10, 12 years. But a lot of work needs to be done. And I would really look at this Industry 4.0 or Society 5.0, which is being talked about in Germany and Japan and other geographies. I think India has to really create whatever I would call it as a Bharat industrial IoT stack, and which is going to really drive faster adoption and probably driving the first time right quality levels of very high levels and improving the labor productivity and the ability to really challenge ourselves to be competitive as compared to many other countries globally.
Thanks, Karthik. That was really insightful. So we also hear these terms: big data, AI, IoT. Personally, which of these technologies do you believe will be transformative, or all of them? And what investments is Cyient focusing on in these areas?
Yeah, I would say if you look at all the digital technologies that are going to really have its own unique value add to the broader industry segments, and the fundamental philosophy is going to be based on data, right? Why people say data is the new oil, and somebody was saying that, by the way, data is the new soil, because we are going to really lay a foundation based on data, and which is going to drive a lot more improvements and a lot more sophistication way of if you really take any manufacturing value chain life cycle. My personal belief, about 15 to 20% can be cut down, whether in the form of rework, poor quality, cost of quality, or inventory, or trying to improve the productivity, or unscheduled maintenance. I can just keep going on, and probably more improved way of inspection, and even the inspection cost in some of the aerospace companies or customers that we work with. And I was surprised to see that every third person was sitting on a large structural tier one, and there was an inspector. And why? Because they don't want to take $1 million stock that is being cut down with various manufacturing processes to create the final finished product, to have some defects which is not easy to correct, because you put so much of value add, you can't really take it out. So it is going to be something where you can really bring in technology intervention much more significantly. And if you compare between auto and automotive globally has probably adopted an automation of about 85%. But if you look at in aerospace, this is less than 20-25%. So there is a significant opportunity to automate. And I think that is going to be another major opportunity for aerospace companies, because when they're really coming back from pandemic, I think they have an opportunity to really recast their own internal view of how they need to look at it. But specific technologies, I would definitely be absolutely excited with what is likely to be led by artificial intelligence and machine learning, and which is based on IoT and your data collection, your way to really deal with data lakes. How do you think you can really create data analytics? And all of them will lead into artificial intelligence, but driving key insights for decision making. Because finally, if you're not going to cut down those 15-20% of spend in terms of what you are doing on quality, productivity, warranty, inventory, and then you are not really benefiting from it. So artificial intelligence is definitely one interesting technology that I'm really excited about, and which also covers your IoT and data analytics and everything into it. The second one would be about the automation part, because the workflow automation, I think it goes beyond the manufacturing plants. When you talk about workflow automation, how do you think you can integrate from product design till the customer service? And how do you think you can really integrate many parts of the enterprise value chain, which are disaggregated, different systems, and not necessarily connected well? And what I would really call it as a workflow automation or orchestration, and leading to significant value of time and money being saved. I think that is going to be an exciting one. And followed by digital twin. And why digital twin? Because it is going to really create a physical virtual combination of what is going to happen. So you can really do a lot more on the virtual side without spending money on physical side. And this is going to be enabled through digital twin. So I would really focus on automation, artificial intelligence, and digital twin as top three, which is going to really be transformative for this decade.
I think I'd like to explore the automotive and the aerospace sectors. You mentioned that the automotive sector has got a great level of automation. In your opinion, what can these two industries learn from each other and contribute for each other to improve?
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation if you really talk to many customers. In fact, pre-pandemic, I can tell you that the challenges the aerospace industry had was they were not able to cope up with the productivity requirements. and most of both Airbus and Boeing were producing about 60, 65 short haul flights per month. But the demand was about 70, 75, and they carried whatever they were calling it as close to uh, 10 years of backlog. And they kind of felt no airline can order something that they're going to get it in the next 3, 5, 7, 8 years. So that's not something which is good for the industry. So they were really trying to learn a lot of things from automotive, which is about before you start laying your assembly process, before you start going into manufacturing, can you create a virtual simulations? Can you really optimize it before you start getting into ordering of equipments, ordering of your machines before you really get there, right? I think that's something which is the best practice that has been coming from the automotive side. And also the supply chain. And how do you think you get better visibility of supply chain? And can you really make the just in time to work for aerospace industry? Because the inventory they were carrying is significantly huge. And then whatever the model based definitions, and they can probably get into a paperless factory, and that's a significant change for the aerospace industry. And apart from that, I think the automotive industry digitalization has probably begun about 15 years ago, and the aerospace industry is behind the curve, not because of anything else. You need a large program where you can ride on the complete digitalization curve, where the cycle time for automotive is 4 to 5 years as compared to aerospace, which may go anywhere between 10 to 15 years. So it probably has a natural tendency of aerospace lagging the curve behind automotive. But I think this is definitely being recognized by the aerospace companies. And I've been part of many visits where the customers wanting to visit many automotive companies to learn on the automation one, right? Because you'll be amazed to see how you can also learn some of the best practices from automotive in terms of automation, the level of automation, the maturity of automation, first time right, and how do you think you can probably replicate something similar in aerospace, the robotics that are involved in automotive? Can you really find a way to build the same kind of human robots or human plus robot combination, which is cobots, which can really be able to help in doing various manufacturing operations in aerospace? The only difference is in aerospace, everything comes to the bay where the aircraft is assembled, as compared to automotive where the car keeps moving on the line. So how do you think some practices could be brought in from automotive into aerospace? And has been definitely tried. But then the pandemic has come, the demand has come down. There are probably 5,000 aircrafts which are yet to be brought into service because of the lesser demand. I'm sure this requires to be consumed in the next 3 to 5 years. And also there is a significant growth that is happening on e-commerce. So there is a freight that is going to really be booming for the next 10 years, thanks to the e-commerce, so or overnight delivery and all of them. So there is going to be a uptake that is going to happen over the next 10 years. So there is going to be a huge demand probably coming back after 2025. And probably the aerospace industry has next 3, 4 years to set their house in order, to really build some of the best practices into a mechanism of flexible manufacturing just in time, and their ability to improve the productivity and probably use the automation techniques that is being learned from the automotive domain.
Thank you, Karthik. Very insightful. I'd like to move on to another question now, which is, your customers, what challenges do the manufacturing industry face related to automation, digital transformation? How is Cyient helping them in these requirements that they come to you with?
Yeah, so I think there are multi different challenges that they have, right? Like what I said, starting from the workflow automation, because many systems are siloed, they don't talk to each other. And how do you really help them to integrate the entire workflow process? How do you really make data flow happen across the chain of the enterprise? And whether you may have a product data available in a PDM or a PLM system, how do you make it to move into MES? How do you move into ERP and planning, and be able to execute in the manufacturing plants and deliver to the customers? So if you really look at this, digitalizing design manufacturing services has been one big area that we had been able to bring in significant value add to the customers. And apart from helping on aftermarket, because the customer journeys, and when I talk about customer journeys, and there are instances that we have come across within our customers who probably have omni-channel. So if you are a an engine manufacturer, and you'll find that you can get very many customers calling you through your website, through your ordering system, or a e-commerce portal, or they may be really sending an email. Now the question is, how do you think you can really create an omni-channel to be integrated and providing unique experience to the customers, irrespective of the channel that you are going to use? If you're going to really get into any of the customer's entry point, you know that whether you ordered some spare parts, you ordered for a maintenance service, you have ordered some new components, and how do you think we know what is in warranty, what is not in warranty? So you get to show them a single dashboard. I think that's going to be significantly helpful. And also trying to improve the aircraft on ground, because that's been a major issue for them. Because if you're an airline, you really want to maximize the aircraft that is going to fly, right? Because that's when you make your money. So how do you make sure that we can reduce significant amount of time on aircraft on ground and improving the maintainability? Because with the pandemic slowly getting away, and the traffic is definitely picking up, how do you think you're able to turn around faster? Because the same customers that we were working 2 years ago versus today, they really want the maintenance cycle to be brought down by at least 25-30% in terms of cycle time. So helping them with remote monitoring, diagnostics, and probably integrate the customer experience into the aftermarket side. And how do you think we can also drive more digital acceleration into the whole enterprise? I think that's the kind of area that we have been working with various customers.
Interesting. Okay. So just a few more questions, Karthik, and I'd like to dig into the experience that you had. Just understand the steps that we should take in the near term to ensure India's India's future as a manufacturing base over this decade. What do you think needs to, two or three of the important things you think that need to be taken for this to get going?
Yeah, so I think the mindset of most of the manufacturers from India is they kind of feel that the moment you talk about automation, they feel that it's a huge capital investment. I think it needs to be looked at from the context of quality and the ability to improve the